Okay, so how do we think of real-time planning at Twitter? So I guess one of the fundamental things that we think about is the moments that are created on the platform. So every single day there are big news events, there are personal moments, there are brand interactions, and these kind of moments at all sorts of different scales we think present a huge opportunity for brands. So just going to kick off by looking at one of those moments, quite a big one, and in this case driven by Anton Deck and Saturday Night TV. The blue line are the real-time tweets at that moment. So, people still love Ant and Dec, and you can clearly tell, at that moment there was this surge of kind of emotion and I guess nostalgia for the past. Last week was a pretty extraordinary week actually for moments on the platform. So one that caught my eye was this beautiful gentleman. I kind of think he's probably everything masculine rolled into one person. And the tash alone kind of makes me come over a little bit romantic. So for those that aren't familiar, this is Commander Hadfield. He's been spending his time on the International Space Station until recently, and he's been engaging in some pretty extraordinary moments on the platform. So he regularly tweets pictures of this is a sunrise as the International Space Station kind of cruises across the sky, and equally has been creating some pretty remarkable moments. So this is him engaging with William Shatner. Are you tweeting from space? Yes, standard orbit, Captain. And we're detecting signs of life on the surface. 5,000 retweets. So we're kind of almost seeing memes created out of real events mashed with fiction and kind of rolled together into these wonderful moments. More recently, this was Sunday, before he left the International Space Station, this was kind of his tribute to space, and he decided to do a cover of Space Oddity by David Bowie, and to send it down to us mere mortals on planet Earth. I'm just going to have a little look at that.
Here am I, sitting in a tin can.
It's actually him singing.
Above the world. Planet Earth is blue, and there's nothing left to do.
So a pretty remarkable moment. I mean, people claiming this was possibly the best thing that humanity had ever done. A bit of a stretch, but kind of something fairly crazy about someone sending a video cover from space back to Earth. To the extent that David Bowie actually got in on the thing, tweeting "Hello, Space Boy." So just kind of rounding off a wonderful moment. So we're finding that more and more, whether it be the biggest news events or slightly geekier news events like this, that news is just getting faster. So whether that be the speed of news cycles, how news breaks, in this example, 240,000 tweets in a few hours. If we think back to Baroness Thatcher dying, it was 1 million tweets within a couple of hours. So just a huge, huge speed of people engaging in news items. And it's not just news, so we see kind of culture also kind of bubbling up. There's probably half of the audience probably love this image, and the other half are not sure, but probably love the image as well. And we see memes bubbling up, some persist, some flare up and disappear, but it's pretty remarkable how quickly that's happening and the ability for brands to, A, create memes, but also jump on existing memes. So I'm sure most of you saw last Friday this Ryan Gosling won't eat cereal actually trended in the #1 spot in the UK, which is, considering it was simply a collection of vines put together with a slightly creepy arm,
and slept with her.
kind of in the cereal. So lots of discussion around that. A few brands tried to get in on the act, so it turns out that Ryan Gosling doesn't mind Captain Crunch, with mixed effects in terms of, but brands trying to get in on that act. So, we see these memes every single day. They're almost the ability to fuse two things together and really tell a story and get people's attention seems to be growing and growing. and I think it presents big opportunities for brands. So if we kind of step back, in terms of internally how we think of the platform, we often kind of repeat this, which is that Twitter is the shortest distance between you and what interests you most. And we often come back to this because we think this really sets up how brands can not just react in the moment, but actually start to plan for it in a way that's consistent and scalable, as opposed to just jumping on memes, which can be really successful. So when we start to see things like this, that you've probably seen about 1 billion times, and I'll try not to bore you with even being here, the Super Bowl blackout, we think it's obviously amazing that the brand Oreo jumped on this meme, and it was obviously a success, but I guess more important than that are the events one layer down that aren't as big as that, the everyday brand kind of events, and also the events that you can plan for, as opposed to this example of having to react in the moment. And there were lots of other conversations going on around the Super Bowl. One of my favorites was non-Americans either confused or just choosing to kind of mock the superb owl meme. It was quite a nice subversive kind of joke on the Super Bowl. And this is obviously the tweet from Oreo. So 16,000 retweets, and beyond that, really just the PR value that they got from really capitalizing on that moment. So we kind of see moments not being just about memes. That can be highly successful, but it's really about how you can be most relevant by targeting people's interests and their kind of intent and intentions on the platform. And we again often refer back to this when we're thinking about our own marketing, which is, in this sea of real-time content, does your brand message consistently rise to the top, and specifically to the people that you want to rise to the top against, and does it stay there? So we find that a lot of the real-time, in-the-moment moments flare up, but it's hard to actually maintain that over time. So when we think about real-time marketing, we think of it as kind of an additive process, and these are the 4 approaches that we think by doing all of these, you can consistently plan for the moment. So always on strategy around interests and kind of intent, a proactive content calendar, scenario planning, we'll hear about some interesting and kind of funny scenarios later, and then finally, absolutely, this real-time reacting in the moment can be incredibly powerful. So we're going to walk through just those very briefly. So the first one is that there's just a huge opportunity to plan for the everyday marketing moments. It isn't always about Ryan Gosling and William Shatner and stuff, although that's pretty cool. So this is an example of Iron Man, and they've been using our new product, keyword targeting, to just simply target people who are expressing an interest in the trailer, say that they want to see the film, and also the other films in the franchise, so Wolverine, for example, and they're retargeting those people to try and convert on that interest and convert on that intent. A little bit broader, so Morrison's at the weekend, we're using the same product, keyword targeting, to retarget people talking about Britain's Got Talent. So tapping into a moment, they didn't necessarily need to be advertising on TV, they may have been, but this was a nice way of tapping into the most passionate fans and tapping into those powerful content moments. So that's the first one. Number 2 is kind of absolutely creating a proactive content calendar. So you can react to stuff, but really putting your best foot forward in terms of good content is really important. Some of the really high production value stuff we see on the platform absolutely can fly, but Paul will talk more about the fact that it doesn't have to be high production or difficult content. Vine can be a great way to do that. So this is a very simple Vine campaign from French Connection. Incredibly simple, but it really gets across their new range and shows that 6 seconds can actually communicate quite a lot. Number 3, so we get into scenario planning. There are lots of positive things that happen on the platform. So every time someone kind of messages your brand, that creates an opportunity. This is definitely one example that they probably, innocent in this case, didn't necessarily need to jump in on, but they actually did to good effect. And they tweeted, "Hung like an innocent veg pot is a new massive cock. Please update your lingo." And fair play to Innocent, they engaged in that conversation, and they actually did it in a really cool way, which was to just jump on it as an opportunity for exposure, but also to reposition and position their brand. So this is one of the more sort of close to the bone comments. So the dolphin tweets, "Tell me something innocent. Are you not tempted to do not so innocent smoothies containing Jägermeister or poppers?" And Innocent replies back with, "Every day, we're classy though, we'd had Carver, then get fired. Do you ever think about getting smoothies on tap?" And the conversation kind of carried on with back and forth between the 2 brands. And that started with essentially a throwaway comment from the dolphin, not even an @reply, but Innocent were listening and kind of ready to respond. And having spoken to them, they had scenario plans in place to decide when they would engage different brands. And then finally, actually not finally, so obviously from time to time shit happens on the platform. And I guess we sort of see it as one of the most underutilized is how you respond in those moments can really help define and redefine brands. So I'm not actually going to talk about dogging tails because I've delegated that responsibility to Mark from TMW, who'll do a better job of it. But it's a great story, and we'll listen to how Lynx reacted to particularly an interesting scenario in that case. And then finally, we've kind of said that it's more important to plan for the moment as opposed to react in it, but absolutely speed can be a key differentiator. So kind of going back to some of the key things that have happened in the last week or so, Sir Alex Ferguson, huge volume of tweets against it, 1.4 million in the first hour. And some brands did incredible things responding to that. One of my favorites was Nando's, who jumped on this whole concept of Nando's Fergie time and decided to actually extend their opening hours in Manchester. Which, it probably wasn't the grandest of gestures, but it was enough to really kind of take it off of Twitter and into a kind of an interesting realm. You can't see the tweet underneath, but it actually says, "You've got me, take all my money, you win," from one of their followers. They're just very quick, 17,000 retweets, very quick to kind of create and orchestrate a moment around that. And this is their website. Just if people didn't believe them, they decided to just show that they were really serious about it. And one of my other favourite things about this particular whole thing was, everyone seemed to retell the same joke in a kind of sarcastic, I am telling a joke, but I'm not telling a joke, but I'm not sure anymore. And we saw hundreds and thousands of those. But the kind of the more interesting thing was that it actually had an impact. And Black Eyed Peas actually got into the top 40 with Where Is the Love? So even kind of mocking, sarcastic tweets can actually have an impact, whether that was the intention or not. So just to kind of wrap up, our perspective on it is, I guess, two key things. One is that it's not just about those big events. Those events happen all the time and can be capitalized on. And also that really it's about not waiting for that moment, but planning for it. So, every tweet that happens between a brand and a potential customer creates a moment that can be capitalized on, every campaign, every event. And really it's how you kind of plan for those particular moments as opposed to waiting for them that really sets brands apart.